Andre, welcome to Phoenix.
It's cold in the desert.
Yeah, I know it is. Who would have thunk it? It's not this cold in Vegas this time of year.
It's actually this cold and windy right now.
It's a little breezy. So, yeah, I know. You want my jacket?
No, I'm good.
Okay,
I'm
you're good. Okay. Yeah. So, Andre, I want to start. I think when we get an opportunity to talk to one of the greats of all time, we like to check in with a status report on where you see the game. When you and Pete and Jim Courier and Boris Becker and Mats Wilander and Stefan Edberg left the game, you left it in a really good place. And it seems like Roger and Rafa and Novak and Andy Murray and that generation took the baton and ran with it admirably. And now here we are in transition again. Where do you see the state of our sport upon these other guys kind of riding off into the sunset a little bit?
Wow. So, hello everyone. You guys are so blessed to have this tournament here. I mean, what a great club environment. So cool. And what a great calendar week. I mean, to get such talent here. I mean, it's awesome to see it this up close. I'm looking forward to that. Yeah, it's interesting, the things that tennis brings out in people, because there's Go Before Me is a Macron O'Connor's board kind of thing, and there's like, what's going to happen to tennis, and people in America look at it sort of nationalistically, like they think tennis is dying because no American has won, and it's growing globally, and then all of a sudden it's me, Pete, Courier, Chang, and boom, and problem solved, it seems, for people, but then we retire, then what's going to happen, and then next thing you know, we have the greatest generation that's ever played with Nadal, Fed, Novak, right? And then it's like, oh, but these guys are gone. Now tennis is really going to die. And then you got a guy like Alcaraz who can do defense like Novak can do, offense like, RPMs and pace and like Nadal, and then has hands like Federer. And you're going, oh, then Sinner, who's one great ball striker. And all of a sudden you're thinking to yourself, well, geez, no, well, tennis is okay. And I just think what you end up realizing is like tennis it's tennis that is so great, that brings out the things that we end up appreciating in the players, right? It's like, it's combat, it's gladiator stuff, So I think it's in an awesome place because of its history, and because of, like, when you look at it from any perspective, the American players, 5 in the top 20 or 25, 2 in the top 10. You look at it from a standpoint of versatility. We're going to start to see that sort of hopefully change now, because the game always leans with the spins and the surfaces getting a little bit closer in speed. The certain kind of athlete has prevailed, and then you got a guy like you're going to see tonight in Fonseca who, I mean, geez, you're sitting next to him at a restaurant, you just wouldn't peg him to be just like the nastiest thing to hit a tennis court and 18 years old. I mean, it's like, you can't legislate 18. He's going to get crazy out there, with the way the decisions he makes. And same with Alcaraz. So I don't worry about tennis. I love the storylines that evolve and sort of reveal themselves. But I also like the problem-solving side of it, and I think the state of it's pretty cool.
You talked at first about how lucky Phoenix is to have this challenger, and thank you, Johnny Levine, for that. Yes.
Yeah.
And his team. But Andre, the roller coaster that was your career had you playing a couple of challengers in '97. And when I think back on what the vibe must have been like with Andre Agassi at a challenger, I mean, I think of like Michael Jordan playing minor league baseball, and what was that like, and the vibe around it. What was it like? How much excitement did you feel, and maybe pressure as a result of that when you played those challengers at that time?
Did Johnny ever tell you he beat me 6-1, 6-0 in the finals of...
Well, I played college tennis with him, so yes.
He did tell you that. He did. It was a satellite. We played in the first tournament in the finals. He beat me 6-1, 6-0. The guy didn't miss a ball for the whole month, by the way. Won the satellite. And then then we played. I went to Seoul, Korea a couple years later. He didn't recognize me because I had grown a little bit. I wasn't 15 anymore.
Went through puberty.
And I beat him first round 6-1, 6-1. And I gave you one more game than you gave me because I wanted to show you what a kind person I was. No. What was your question? No, I'm kidding.
When you played the challengers, what was the vibe like of Andre Agassi walking into a challenger event?
I mean, listen, it's a long story, so I'll save you all those, the depth of the context of everything. But I got to number one in the world, and people thought I must have been living a dream, and I was probably the most disconnected, unhappy person in a lot of ways. And I spent 2 years falling to 140 in the world. Everybody was surprised except me. Then when I found my reason for playing, I had to start over again. It was too important to me, and people thought it was, Bruce Springsteen playing at the local bar or something, But for me, it was the most connected I'd ever felt with tennis, because I finally had my reason to be back out there. And while I was playing guys that maybe never dreamed they'd meet me, let alone beat me, at the end of it, I was where I needed to be, and that felt so good. And so what is typically hard about challenger level is these guys are fighting to get to a place where they can count on their life, where they can count on their schedule, where they can count on being in tournaments, and they can count on paying their bills. They can count on, changing their plane reservation because it's going to cost them if they don't, right? It's tennis is you succeed at somebody else's demise, and they're out there fighting for each other's livelihood. So, and it's really raw, and it's really honest, and it's the only true meritocracy that exists is sports. It's like there's no hiding from it. You eat what you kill, and so it's like you're out there in a challenger, man. You're out there with guys that always have fangs. I mean, you play higher level tournaments, and you play guys that can afford to say, shit, I need a week. Worst case scenario, 6-4-1-0. I could use 5 days off and get ready for the next tournament. You'll never get that here. So it's a fight. It's a fight I needed to engage in, and one that I look back on and I'm very proud of. But at the time, it was very endearing too that the people in my life treated it like Wimbledon, because it was important to my next step. And every one of these guys you see out here is every swing of the racket is important to their next step. And you don't always have that luxury. It's the difference of watching college sports or watching the first 3 quarters of an NBA game. It's like, it doesn't start till the fourth quarter. It's like, it's at the risk of, judging other people's realities, there's something really nice when somebody gives a shit from start to finish.
Yeah, you can clap for that, because that's a great answer. Andre, I think those of us that watched your career sort of, if we watched it closely, we think of your career in terms of before Gil Reyes and after Gil Reyes. And obviously you had some great coaching. You worked with the likes of Brad Gilbert and Darren Cahill, 2 of the best in the business. But really a guy who seems like was a life changer, not just a life changer with regard to what was happening on the court for you, but on and off the court, was the work that you did with Gil Reyes. And I ask you that because I feel like when people take on the challenge that a guy like Gil brings forth, all of us can accept that challenge with the right trainer or the right influence. Talk about that relationship and how that changed you as a player and as a man and as a husband and as a father. There was just so much that it seems like Gil did.
Well, yeah, so he was my strength coach, but honestly, he's probably one of the first people in my life to make me realize that I was worth being cared for. I mean, he valued me more than he did my performance. My entire identity as a child and on the tour as a young teenager, was about performance, and that was my worth, and that was the end of it. And Gil helped me realize that I'm more important than that, which was a great relief, great safety for me. But he just didn't build my body, he built my mind. But at the time, I'm 18 years old. I'm 5'10" and a half, on a good day 5'11". I weighed 150 pounds, like soaking wet. Like, if I stepped out of a swimming pool with all my clothes and shoes, like I was 150. That was my goal, just to be. And I was playing in the semis of the French Open against Mats Wilander in 1988, and he'd won 3 of the 4 Grand Slams. And I should have beat him. I didn't feel his game. I was dictating everything. He could run for days, and won the 4th set and got to the 5th set and had break points, multiple break points, first game of the 5th. And I'm thinking, this guy's not good. That's what I was thinking to myself at the moment. It's like, I can handle it. I'm 18 and I don't know anything about the game yet. I haven't learned anything about the game except the fact that all of a sudden, like, I started cramping, and like I was like, oh, this guy's actually pretty good. I mean, he's been doing this for 4 hours, and he's just waiting for me to go away, and he knew it was inevitable. So I needed to build my body just to be able to maximize, you know, what I could do on a tennis court. And when I found Gil, I didn't realize I found something a lot more than just a strength coach. I mean, he's the godfather of my children. You know, he's my surrogate father. He's my lifeguard. He's everything. So I said, everybody here is better off if they have anybody in their life on their team in life like him.
So Andre has a tendency, to pour his heart out into a microphone from time to time if you're fortunate to be there, like Andrew Chaney was the day Andre was there to present his wife into the Hall of Fame along with your grandmother, Dodo Chaney.
Aww.
Right, and so Andrew brought that to my attention, and I'm like, well, I'm gonna bring that up to Andre because he talks about what an incredible influence Gil Reyes has been, but I have to imagine from what we saw from Steffi Graf all those years as a tennis player that what an incredible influence she has been on your life and the life of your kids as well.
Yeah, she's taught me not to bring a trophy home because if I do, she will. So I'm like, respect, like amnesia lane, that part of our life's over, you know. Hard to be number one in the world and number two in your own house. I mean, nobody's going to pull that shit off again, I guarantee you. Unless, of course, if like I don't know, Sinner married like Alcaraz or something, I don't know. You were asking me about Steph, Dodo, or Hall of Fame, or what were you asking about?
The way you poured your heart out. Just talk about Steph and the relationship in terms of what that's done to ground you and what it did for your kids. I read something that Jaden said recently about how great his parents were, plural, because their parents were pretty tough on them. You know, your folks and her folks, and how you guys kind of learned from that. And he really feels like he and your daughter were very fortunate that you learned those lessons and have been like, whatever you guys want to do, we'll support it.
Well, yeah, our methodology as parents were pretty simple, you know, which is we didn't have the luxury of choice in our life, right? But sometimes we spend a lot of time as parents giving our kids everything we never had, that sometimes we can forget to give them what we did have. And that's a big deal. So we definitely wanted to give them choice, but we didn't want to deny them the good that we had. I mean, we had to learn a lot, you know, and we had to ask the most of ourselves, and maybe something we didn't choose. And we were always held accountable to making the most of ourselves, but not for the sake of being the most of ourselves, for the sake of winning and performing. So we could get rid of all that crap, and we could say to our kids, you know, listen, you get to choose, but guess what? If you say something's important to you, then your actions in life better reflect it, and that's what we're going to hold you accountable to. We're not going to tell you what to do, but we're going to listen to what you say you want to do, and then you better live what you claim you believe. If you don't, one of two things is wrong. You either really don't want that, or we're being irresponsible and not helping you hold yourself accountable to, you know, being capable of so much more. So I think that's kind of been our methodology as parents, generally speaking. But at the same time, you know, it's like living with the Wizard of Oz of sorts, right? Everybody, you know, they get to live behind the curtain. You know, it's like, you know, if you live authentically and you go to the grocery store and people treat you like you're something special, and you sort of kind of go, well, that's your perspective, but you know, we struggle as much as you do on a lot of things. And then your kids get in the car and they kind of realize, wow, everything people tell them, everything they see just doesn't really line up with what is, except the truth of how, you know, it's actually a great tool. It's actually a great asset to help your kids sort of have some sense of context for their own life, some sense of idea of what success really means and the importance of defining success. And they get to appreciate in context the choices that we all make every day on what it is we value. And so they actually have a pretty interesting lens that was a great tool for us to hopefully, teach them with.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, imagine Andre and Steffi are your parents. You might learn a few things. How about a cute story? Andre's from Vegas. In Vegas, there's a lot of poker players there, and they have a tendency to be able to read people's tells. Raise your hand if you've heard the story about how Andre used to read Boris Becker's serve. Okay, so you have few of you, but I think, Andre, it's worth mentioning because I think what's funny about it is when you told Boris about it, what his reaction was. So maybe you can kind of take it from there.
Yeah, I mean, tennis is interesting. There's only one shot in tennis you control yourself, and nobody else has a say, and that's the serve, right? Every other shot is dictated by court position, dictated by pace, dictated by strengths and weaknesses, what your objective is, where you're going to put the ball down with no pace, through the court with pace, up and high. So there's a lot of working component, but the serve is something you sort of practice in a silo, a bit like a golfer might go out and just stand over a ball and think about what they're going to do. And so one of the things that tends to happen in tennis when people serve in a silo is they tend to get into, routines and habits that kind of reflect what it is they're doing. They're like tells, if you will, and Boris had one, but I discovered it because it was just odd. It was just odd. His tongue always did something weird when it always did. He'd get to this part of his. Remember how robotic? He used to always like, and then he'd get to like a certain part, and then his tongue would like. It wouldn't be that it would just like point, but it would either come out straight, or he had this ability to roll the tongue. Like the tongue, you could see the tongue like almost twist. So I don't know if you know it, but like, have you ever tried it? My mom can't do this, but like some people can just move their tongue in weird ways. Other people somehow can't, right? I can't do what he did. He used to like roll it like a Cinnabon pretzel or like a churro or something, And so when he would roll it, he was always cutting the ball, and then when he was sticking it straight, he was always going through the court. So in the deuce court, it was like T serve or body because he's going to try to beat with pace. If he rolled it, it was like a cut, ad court opposite. In any case, the hardest part wasn't reading the serve. It was not letting him know that I could read it. Because I didn't want him to like go, okay, he's reading my serve and then figure it out. I'd rather him ace me 25 times and lose 5 and 4. It's like perfect, I need to win the right point. So I read it for a long time and kept him from knowing it forever, and swore one day I would look forward to telling him when he was retired. And he took me out to Oktoberfest when he was retired, and I was with him and his wife, Barbara, at the time, and my coach, and I'm going, I can't do it now. I mean, I can't tell him now. It's like, it doesn't seem right. He's hosting me at the Oktoberfest. Then we had one beer, and I'm like, well, like, maybe I could tell him. And then it was like, second beer goes down. I said, I got to tell him. You got to be honest. I mean, you can't just sit here and like, I feel like I'm living a lie in front of the guy. And then the third beer, it's like, fuck, I'm telling him. I'm telling him. So I told him, and I said, by the way, you always did this thing with your tongue, and he just kind of stopped. He looked like a deer in headlights. He took it like a champ, and then his wife just hit the table and started laughing so hard. And she's like, all the nights that you kept me up because all he would talk about is like, the guy reads my mind. It's like he reads my mind. And then you were just reading his tongue. Yeah, but he's in denial about it. I know this for sure, because we have mutual people, friends, and what have you. And they said no, he's denied. I said okay, just next time he denies it with you, then make him admit that I was so much better than him. I could beat him 10 times in a row, not knowing where he was serving, because he has the choice. He's either going to admit that I could read his serve, or is he's going to somehow have to say I was that much better, and I guarantee you I wasn't that much better.
It was all in the tongue. How's that story, right? Awesome. So, Andre, let's talk about two of the majors that you won that I think we saw so much incredible emotion. One it seemed like just pure relief, which was winning Wimbledon in '92 when you beat Goran in the final, and the other one was when you came from 2-0 down against Andre Medvedev at the French to complete the career Grand Slam. Sort of talk about the different emotions of those two, because they were both such massive days for the sport of tennis, not just for you, but for all of us.
6-7, 6-4, 6-4, 1, 6-6-4. I don't remember anything about the match.
No.
1-6, 2-6, 6-4, 6-3, 6-4. And
Okay.
that's slipping my mind.
Sorry
as well.
that
Yeah, I mean, winning. I lost 3 Grand Slam finals. I was in process of going down as one of the great underachievers of all time. People saying I didn't have what it takes to win. Me saying I don't have what it takes to win. Playing somebody favored that day in Wimbledon kind of taught me an interesting lesson that you can't play to not lose. You have to play to win. You have to get over the finish line proactively, and I didn't. In the first 3, I was favored, and I was protecting the downside of losing and hoping the other one would. And then when I got out there against Goran, it was like I felt like I had to do something special to win. So that freed me up to go, well, I'm going to lose anyhow, so I might as well try this, try that. And I got very, dangerously provocative with all my shots, and I got over the finish line. So that kind of, more than anything, it was a relief, because I realized that, that I can, and but it also made me, better. So it was more relief for sure. And then, but I don't know. I mean, relief. And then I won 1990 French. It's only my last of the 4 Grand Slams. The one that eluded me for a decade. I mean, could have won it, should have won it twice in a row 10 years earlier. I mean, I was favored in both finals, and then here I was, coming off 140 in the world playing challengers, back to this opportunity that I was old enough to realize I'll never have this opportunity again, so what do you do with those demons? And I was, I was a deer in headlights, lost the first 2 sets in under an hour, 52 minutes, and then kind of found a way to dig in, turn it around, climb Mount Everest without oxygen or Sherpas. So it's, to win the last of the 4 and to know I'll never have another regret inside those lines that defined me for so long. So, I could argue that there's a lot of relief in that too, but there's a hell of a lot of gratitude. And that day I felt probably more gratitude than relief.
So that day, Andre won the career slam. He's one of 2 players. He was the only player for quite some time to win the Super Slam. Who knows what that is?
They don't know what that is because it's called the Golden Slam, not the Super Slam.
No, it is the Super Slam.
Okay.
I'm going to correct you.
I'm not here to argue.
So the 4 majors, the gold medal, and the Tour Championships is the Super Slam.
The Super Golden Slam.
Super Golden Slam. Okay, we can compromise on that.
You call
You
the
and no-
ATP and Championships. You put that in that bucket, really?
I read it.
What, do you
I
work
just
for
read
the
it.
ATP
It's in your,
or what?
It's in your Wikipedia. I'm just doing
The
research
ATP
here.
has you in like their back pocket, for God's sake.
They haven't paid
There's
me
the
a
4
nickel.
Grand Slams. There's the Olympics. All right.
Okay. All right. No Super Slam,
I mean,
you guys.
and then there's this
Stand
tournament right here in
corrected.
Phoenix, baby.
Right. There you go.
That's the real stuff.
That's the Super Duper Slam. All right, Andre, this would not be a complete interview without talking about the rivalry with Pete. Everybody loves hearing, you're on the short list of the greatest American players of all time. Obviously you guys and Mac and Jimmy, and I mean, you guys are the top 4 of all time.
And me and
now
Pete
that
are
you're
way better.
Yeah, okay, I'll give you that. But you guys, I mean, now that you're in your mid-50s, where does all of that stand when you look back on your career and what you guys did for each other and for our sport?
Well, yeah, listen, it's you can work hard at something. You can be talented. I mean, I'd take hard work over talent any day of the week. But when talent can work hard, it's pretty special. And if you have the talent, you work hard, you can be number one. There's a lot of luck. There's a lot of things involved, but you're not guaranteed to have somebody that's doing the same thing, playing the game completely opposite of you, personality that is totally opposite of you, right? That you're not guaranteed rivalry, and Pete was that, when I look back, I look at him like a mirror, in my life. There were times I looked at him and I envied him. There were times I looked at him and I was resentful of him. There was times I looked at him and it made me realize what I wasn't, and other times it gave me hope and made me believe. But we all pushed each other. I turned pro at 16, and then Chang, Curry, or Pete knew they could turn pro, and then Chang wins a slam, and then Pete says, well, then I can do that. And then Courier says, well, I can win a slam and I can be number one. And then it's like, well, geez, maybe we all can do this, right? And I think you need each other, right? You all need each other. And, what it meant for the sport is for the sport to define. But, I would have won a hell of a lot more without Pete in my life. But I think overall I would have been a hell of a lot less.
And again, as we go forward and we start to look toward the future of American tennis, we sort of talked a little bit about a broad picture of the state of the game, but let's circle back. What do you like about some of the players that you're seeing now, and maybe what do they need? What does a Ben Shelton need? What does a Taylor Fritz need? Some of these guys that I know you like what you're seeing, but if you were standing on the sideline, what would you be telling a couple of these guys to get them over the finish line like you did?
Well, I mean, first of all, they're doing a fantastic job for, to be in the discussion to get them over the finish line. They already have a lot to be proud of. I think Ben is probably the rawest out of all of them, meaning the most upside. Geez, what I would tell Ben. Ben Shelton is an incredible athlete. He's a boss out there. Power that's just insane, movement that's insane, competitiveness, spirit that's insane, has hands when he comes forward, has pretty much everything he needs. But he treats, I don't want to be critical. You're filming me for God's sake, but it's but he treats every point as a one-off. If I had to sum it up, let's say, talk layman's terms, I would say he approaches matches with the right objective, which is to be disruptive, but it's not the main objective, right? He thinks mixing it up every point is incredibly disruptive. It is incredibly disruptive, but mostly to himself. I would argue with him that he needs to value himself more than that. He has a baseline game that can be imposing. He needs to understand what that is. He needs to bring it to the table, full stop. And then if somebody's answering that bell, then he needs to be disruptive to remind them that he can do other things. But he tries to string together a match by winning a lot of one-off points, and he can do it, which is prolonging that learning curve. So if you ask me what I would do, I would sit down with him and tell him not to do that.
Ladies and gentlemen, he is one of the great American athletes in history and a gem and an American treasure, and he is literally shivering right now. So we are going to thank Andre Agassi for joining us here in Phoenix tonight. We appreciate it so much. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it as much as I did.